Welcome back. Let's talk about why do you stop yourself from achieving your full potential? Once we understand the problem, we'll also discuss the solution as to how do you become unstoppable. Every single day, people stop themselves in so many different ways. As an example, many entrepreneurs shy away from marketing to more potential customers. Also, they might not be doing the required follow ups to close the sale. On the other hand, many in jobs might not be speaking up in meetings to let their ideas known. Also, they might be hanging on to jobs which they hate and not apply to new ones. Moreover, a lot of people keep perpetually delaying the launch of their startup, which they might have been dreaming for years. If you can relate this to your life, then let's discuss as to why you do this. It's not laziness, it's the fear of rejection that stops you. Human minds are complex. It takes in a lot of sensory information. It then processes it against established beliefs and desires to predict your next action. This all happens within milliseconds beyond your control. All you see is the end result of you stopping yourself. You don't take the necessary action that you know would move you forward. By the way, this happens not only in business but also in your personal life. In personal life, it shows up as you not letting your own needs known to friends and family. You build a socially acceptable persona. All interactions are simply designed to avoid rejection. Basically, human minds are highly optimized for survival. It cares more about your survival than your business or career success. It makes decisions accordingly. There are a lot of cognitive biases at play in your mind to help you with your survival. An example that all of us are very familiar with is the loss aversion cognitive bias. People hate losses more than they enjoy the equivalent gains. Similarly, the fear of rejection is also like a cognitive bias. In the early years of human evolution, getting rejected from the tribe threatened survival. There are some people, though, who have a heightened sensitivity to rejection. The medical industry calls it rejection sensitive dysphoria, also known as RSD. Basically, they give up trying anything new unless they are assured of quick and complete success. On the personal front, they never show their authentic self due to fear of rejection. Basically, they end up becoming people pleasers. So, on one end of the spectrum, you have people who suffer fear of rejection in a moderate way, while on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who suffer the fear of rejection in an exaggerated way. Then there are people in between. There are very few outliers. In fact, the outliers who never fear rejection are like born entrepreneurs, salespeople, and risk takers. So the majority of people need to overcome this fear of rejection to achieve their full potential. Before we discuss how to overcome this fear of rejection, let us understand how mind is structured. You can consider mind as organized into three concentric layers. You have intellect on the outer layer and intelligence on the inner layer. In between, you have the ego. The intellect on the outer layer is like a knife, always dissecting things. It is responsible for rational and logical thinking. This faculty of the mind is used extensively to make progress with science and technology in the outer world. Also, math and language is learned through intellect. You sharpen the intellect through education, books, etc. It's built from borrowed knowledge. One thing unique about the intellect is that it needs an identity to work for. This identity is provided by the ego. Thus, intellect is always working to protect the ego, that is, family, state, nation, etc. As an example, if you identify as American, You would use your intellect to protect American interest. If you identify as Chinese, you would use your intellect to protect Chinese interest. The fear of rejection is really the rejection of whatever you have identified with. Basically, it's the fear of rejection of the ego. Intelligence, on the other hand, is not something that you acquire from the outside world. It is not built with borrowed knowledge. It's your born quality. It cannot be learned. It has a capacity of its own to see into things and into problems. Intuition is part of intelligence. It's possible that someone who's not educated might have more intelligence than someone who has education from Harvard or MIT. This is because education mostly sharpens the intellect. Many big discoveries were made by people who did not have much of a formal education. On the other hand, people who are very well educated and made big discoveries claimed that they had to drop their intellect, let go, and settle into their intelligence for the great discovery to happen. In fact, Einstein has a famous quote on this. He says, "The intellect has little to do on the road to discovery. There comes a leap in consciousness, call it intuition or what you will. The solution comes to you and you don't know how or why." Society confuses intellect to be intelligence. Actually, AI in its current state should not be called artificial intelligence, but more appropriately, artificial intellect. Your intelligence is close to your inner center. This inner center is your true self or pure consciousness. Your spirit or soul flows into you through this. It connects you to the entire cosmos. When you're rooted in your inner center, you are the entire cosmos. In ancient India, this was referred to as Aham Brahmasmi, meaning I am God. You may not know, but you're not a human being striving to be spiritual, but rather a spiritual being first having a human experience. This is the inverse way to look. When you look to the world from this inner center, the whole perspective changes. In fact, in ancient India, children at a very young age were first made aware of this inner center and intelligence before starting to teach anything to their intellect. The idea was to create a larger identity in them of being the cosmos themselves. Once the individual was rooted in this larger identity, their intellect in future would work to protect this larger identity instead of the small ego. Thus, they would always use their intellect to work for the larger good of humanity. But the education system in the modern world does not make you aware about this inner center and intelligence. Thus, the identity gets rooted in the ego. So your intellect ends up defending the ego all the time. The constant fear of rejection is always the rejection of the ego. The entire art of meditation is to bring you to your inner center or true self. Any meditation technique like mindful meditation would help in bringing you to your true self. With practice, you can be rooted in your true self. Once you're identified with your true self and operate from there, then suddenly there would be no fear of rejection. This is because your true self or pure consciousness is the cosmos. If you are the cosmos, then how could you have fear of rejection? You are the whole. What can rejection do to you? Nothing. It is the ego that has to worry about survival and not the cosmos. Why fear when you are the cosmos? This is radical. Suddenly, you would be able to fearlessly pull the trigger and make that phone call or do that follow-up, speak up in meetings or change jobs. Above all, you will be able to launch your startup that you have been perpetually delaying. Basically, you will become unstoppable. Come learn more about it at UpTinker. It'll help you in building your startup. And thank you for watching.